Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Oh, there you are. I was hoping I'd cross paths with you today. I'd like to invite you to visit the Story Well. It's a place where storytellers of all stripes gather. From improv performers to authors, screenwriters to playwrights, we all tell stories. But we're not here to talk about craft. We're here to make something out of nothing. Each episode of the podcast, your host, that's me, sits down with a creative person, and based on a series of random prompts, we get elements that we make into a story. Will it be a noir novel about King Kong? Or a Broadway musical about JFK? Even we don't know. That's the fun part. But what do you get out of this, besides a good time with fun people? Simple. The idea is then yours. That's right. Whatever we come up with, we give it away for anyone to use however they'd like, no strings attached. It's like each episode comes with a free prize inside. The Story Well with Kyle Olson. We'll save you a seat at the table.
Hey, movie lovers, I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson. We are the hosts of the Next Reel Film Podcast.
If you're passionate about films like we are, you'll love our show. Each week, we dive deep into a movie, discussing everything from the story and performances to the cinematography and score.
Not to mention budgets and awards. We have covered iconic series like Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather trilogy, examining themes of power, family, and the dark side of the American dream.
We've explored the works of groundbreaking directors like Catherine Bigelow, discussing her mastery of tension.
We've looked at heist films, great car chases, great years in film, couples on the run, and more.
Our discussions go beyond the surface, examining what makes each film tick. We believe that when the movie ends, the conversation begins.
And we'd love for you to join that conversation. Find the Next Reel Film Podcast on your favorite podcast app or at thenextreel.com.
The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Superhero Ethics Podcast. Today, myself and co-host from back in the day, special guest extraordinaire, Mr. Paul Hoppe, are here to talk about Cobra Kai, Season 6, Part 2, the show that keeps jumping the shark and finding new sharks to jump. And every time we think it's gone truly ridiculous, it says, hold my beer. What do you think? And let me just start by saying, we're just going to jump right in. We're going to have lots of spoilers. As far as I can tell, a lot of people really love this section of the show, this part 2 of a season.
Really?
I enjoyed a lot of it.
Okay. Sure.
But not in quite the same, like, oh, this is quality television way that I might have enjoyed season 1. We've not actually shared much of our opinions about this. I think, though, we're going to be mostly on the same page. But let me just say, Paul, so full spoilers. Paul, what's your kind of overall thought? And for those who haven't seen it, don't worry, we'll give you kind of a summary. But just, Paul, part 2 of Season 6. How we feeling?
So first of all, it's Master Paul Hoppe. I don't like the word Mister in general, and we're talking about martial arts. So, we're just gonna start there. Because half of what I have to say is, like, as a martial artist, very mixed feelings here, because there were some spectacular displays of athleticism and technique. Most of it wasn't karate. And I'm pretty sure it is actually a karate tournament or karate. But like, you got a Brazilian team doing capoeira. You've got just people. Everyone's just doing most of them are doing taekwondo. Like, let's face it, as a taekwondo practitioner, like, I know a bunch of them, like, they trained in taekwondo. I don't mean I know them. Right. I just mean, like, so on the martial arts front, super not faithful to, like, what I would want to see out of a show about martial arts, but in terms of the actual choreography and stunts, some of it was awesome, for sure.
Yeah. I will say, to add to the cast, they got a couple of very well-known martial artists, some of whom had already been trying to, like, develop acting careers. Others were just well-known martial artists. They forgot to give them characters. With any development besides two dimensions, but there were some great martial arts scenes.
Yeah. So as a writer, and, I felt that, like, is it Brandon H. Lee? I think, right? Yeah. I know he has a middle initial. Okay, it's H. Brandon H. Lee and what was her name? Raina Vallandingham.
I think that I tried to listen to it a couple times. I think
Yeah,
that's how you pronounce it.
I haven't heard any interviews or anything, but are both outstanding martial artists and totally bring it on the mat. As far as acting chops, I don't even know. Like, just the writing did not give them really anything to work with. And for other characters, seeing, you know, characters who I've seen be well acted at points, I just felt like the writing was like, you know, you talked about jumping the shark. I feel like I always felt like the series was kind of there, but I do think it was kind of they jumped the balcony railing at the end of season 2. But here, I think they jumped the Sharknado. Like,
see, I actually am going to say something else. I think Jump the Shark is something that occurred because in an episode of like late seasons of Happy Days, the character of Fonzie was skiing and jumped over a shark, and that was people like, this show is just gone. And so for decades now, the term jumping the shark has been used for when the show has just gone far beyond any ability to call it realistic in anything. I think it's time to retire the term jump the shark.
I'm with you.
I don't think shows jump the shark anymore. I think they fall on their own knife. Because a character at the end of this, in one of the most ridiculously convoluted, idiotic chains of events, presumably dies or possibly just massively injures themselves.
Pretty dead.
By attempting a running, jumping attack while holding a knife, misses, and falls on his own knife. So that's my new term. The show didn't jump the shark. This has not only jumped the shark, this has created a new term.
Yeah, and because it's self-inflicted, like the injuries that this show does to itself. I felt when the whole tournament, like, I guess we're starting with the end, right?
Well, why don't I actually give a plot summary here?
Yeah.
So
go for it. Try.
So we are at the Setai Taikai, which is, I believe we're supposed to think in this part, the greatest karate tournament in the world. It was referred to at times in part 1, I believe, as a fighting tournament. So some of the, like, everyone fighting more in line with their national fighting style, although the Irish team didn't break beer pints and fight with those, so it's not quite that. But now it's described as a karate tournament, and we learned that all of our heroes are on Miyagi-Do. Danny and Johnny are leading the team together, but Tori has betrayed the team and shown up with Cobra Kai. And Cobra Kai is now being led by John Kreese, as always, and also the Dragon Lady. Forgive me, I mean, her character does have a name, if a very one-dimensional characterization.
I don't agree, and I find the term Dragon Lady kind of offensive. And I know it's intended to refer to a role type that is offensive, but I actually think it's time to retire the term, the way I think Mary Sue is not really a constructive thing. Fair. But the point being that the character doesn't really get a ton of depth, but I do actually feel like there's a little bit more there. Here.
There's much more than some of the other characters. Yeah. What I meant is that, like, she falls into a lot of the stereotype of the sexy, villainous Asian woman and how she's presented. But yeah, I agree. Probably a poor term use on my part. My apologies there. But so, and we're trying to figure out why Tori is doing this, and everyone's upset. No one's acknowledging what we talked about in terms of the last part, where we thought that maybe actually she should have been allowed to decide how she wants to deal with the grief of the death of her mother. But no one's taking accountability for that. We're just mad at her. And we're starting this great fighting tournament with from teams from all over the world, primarily Europe, which we all know is a hotbed of karate and martial arts. Although there is the team from mostly Korea. I had not realized this until recently, but the Iron Dragons, which is the team that becomes important, is from Hong Kong, even though I don't think either of the main stars of it are Chinese themselves. But we have fights, and some of the fights. Right.
Or
The sensei
he's
is certainly
Singaporean Chinese descent. Louis Tan.
Mm-hmm. Right. We have some really interesting fights. A lot of them are these kind of group fighting challenges that are designed where it's like 2-on-2, or it's like a tag in, tag out thing, or it's like knock people off of these kind of high rise things.
It's American Gladiators.
It's basically American Gladiators with karate. It does allow for cross-gender fighting, which we kind of talked before about, like, kind of, it being interesting how it was divided. So it's kind of fun that was allowed. And it turns out that one of the teams that everyone's really threatened by is the Iron Dragons, which is this team that I originally thought was from Barcelona themselves, which is where it's all taking place. Apparently the Barcelona tourist board, I think, like, paid them to come because they're just lots of shots that remind you that Barcelona is a really great city. The training montage involves them going to all of these wonderful tourist spots that I was just like, tourist spot, got the money's worth. But anyway, so fight. Iron Dragons are now a threat. Cobra Kai is a threat. Danny LaRusso gets kidnapped and locked in a cage.
What are we doing? What are we doing?
Because he's chasing down the legacy of Miyagi. He assumes that Kreese is doing this, but it turns out it's not Kreese. It's our old friend, because no one stays dead. No one stays in jail. No one ever stays off the board for long. John,
John Silver. It's just Silver. I don't even care. I don't even want to remember his name.
It's just Silver. He's back. There's apparently like an Asian guy who was working as kind of like a henchman for Cobra Kai in the second or third movie, and Danny LaRusso beats him up. He's back as a thug for Silver.
Terry Silver.
That's it. Terry Silver. Thank you. Chosen is back. The guy who Danny fought in season 2, in the second Karate Kid movie. Like, lots of people are back. Shenanigans happen. Teenagers try to date each other, try to keep their relationships.
Arguably sexually assault one another. The questions of who is drunk and who is not, and who can give consent is raised, but the show doesn't seem to understand that it's raising them in a way that's kind of problematic. The show doesn't seem very interested in it.
No, not at all. Although I think, well, we'll talk about that.
That could come back. Yeah, we'll see, I guess.
Yeah. And just we get introduced to a lot of these characters who are very one-dimensional. So one of those characters is Zara, played by Raina Valoringham, I think. Incredible martial artist. And she might be a very good actress. I have no idea, because her character is a mean girl, like not a well-developed character like Regina George, just a straight-up mean girl who's also an influencer, who spends all of her time when she's not fighting being very flirty and being on Instagram or some Instagram-like thing because she's an influencer, talking down everyone around her.
Which the actress actually is as well. Apparently she has like 5 million followers on like TikTok and Instagram or whatever.
Right. But I don't think most of her content revolves around like, can she steal the boyfriend of this guy of this?
I hope not. I think it's martial arts related.
I think she does some modeling and stuff, and looks very good at it. So, but yeah, so there's a whole plot line there, and Robbie drinks for the first time and gets very drunk, and then wakes up in her room, and kind of she kisses him on the way out, and he kind of kisses her back, but is kind of just out of it.
He literally says, "I don't remember what happened last night."
Right. In terms of that, I mean, I'm saying when he kisses her, he doesn't like push her away or anything like that, but he definitely seems kind of like very confused about things. Which again is the kind of like, did she take advantage of him while drunk? That certainly seems the implication here. And I hope that that's brought up in some way, but not sure. But of course, with perfect timing, Tori sees that happen. Tori had broken up with him, but sort of, but not really, but yes, but no. But she's upset about it because they were only taking a break. If this all sounds ridiculous and convoluted, yes, that's the point.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, also the character played by Brandon Initial Lee. H. Lee, thank you. He's the one who plays the guy from Korea, right?
Kwan.
Kwan.
It means fist. I don't know whether it literally means fist in that particular instance of it, if that's the idea, but yeah, I think.
And again, if the writers to decide how to write Zara, just watch the movie Mean Girls a lot. To write his character, I think they just watched like 1980s high school movies and high school bullies a lot, because he's basically playing Johnny from the original.
I was going to say, so they watched The Karate Kid.
Yeah. All he does is be like, oh, I am better than you. I will bet my hotel room against yours. I don't.
Yeah, I don't know why that's what you would go to wager. Like, what? There's so many other things to bet.
He flirts with Tori and he mocks the people who he beats by being an incredible martial artist. And meanwhile, the other guy from the Iron Dragons team kind of has a crush on Sammy. But Sammy, of course, has a boyfriend, and then he gets really mad at the boyfriend because apparently teenagers aren't capable of having any kind of rational emotions in these TV shows.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit more rationality possible. But so
definitely
anyway,
possible, yes.
It's
just not always there.
It makes, again, the show just feel incredibly unbalanced because half the show is, oh my gosh, can we win this high school tournament? Who do we like? Who do we want to date? And the other half is Mr. Miyagi killed someone in the tournament way back in the day, and Danny LaRusso's getting kidnapped, and Kreese wants to kill Silver with a knife.
And then Quan lands on said knife.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a couple other plot twists. There's so it just felt incredibly lazy writing throughout the entire thing. Like every bad stereotype you could go through, all the way to there's a Russian team that because Cobra Kai originally gets eliminated, but then has to get brought back. And how do they do that? The Russian team is caught taking performance-enhancing drugs. Which causes the Russians to go utterly apeshit.
Yeah.
And right when the actual one-on-one matches are supposed to start, the Russian coach knocks out the German head of the Federation, and then just all hell breaks loose. And honestly, I was going to say Jump the Shark has been replaced with a Royal Rumble at the Saikai Taikai until the kid fell on the knife.
Yeah.
So that's the plot summary.
Yeah. So starting at the end, not the end, but the last episode, I actually, when they were just like, okay, forget all this, we're just going to have everybody fight everybody. Yeah. I was like, they've accepted what they are.
Yes.
You know, where I remember one of the ridiculous fight scenes at, maybe it was the LaRusso's house, I'm not sure. And at the end of one of the season finales, I remember we might have had a split feelings about it. I'm not sure, but I was kind of like, they're just fighting. That's fine. Like this is where we are, you know, like instead of having these little individual reasons for everybody wanting to fight each other. And like, there's these like rational it's just like, all right, just everybody fight, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's just how they're going to end a season. Or I guess in this instance, that's how they're going to end you know, a half season, a third season. What are they doing? What are we doing with these part seasons? Just call it another season. Like
we're stretching it out as much as we can.
Who started this? I know Stranger Things did. Breaking Bad. I blame Breaking Bad. That's the first one I remember.
So I think it actually started because of the writer's strike, not the recent one, but the one like 15 years ago. Because that caused a lot of like part 1, part 2 of seasons for like legit reasons. And then after that, a lot of people were like, oh, hey, that was kind of cool. Double the marketing, double the money.
Maybe. That was like almost 20 years ago now, right? That writer's strike, I think.
I think so, yeah.
But yeah, I know Breaking Bad used we're going to split season 6 into 2 half seasons. And it's like, why isn't it season 6 and 7? And also, you know, going back further, I blame Quentin Tarantino with Kill Bill 1 and 2, but whatever. Anyway, I digress. So I actually, once they just started fighting each other, I was like, all right, whatever, man. Like, it's cool. Like, let's just watch some stunts, you know?
Yeah, the fighting was cool.
And so that, like, I was like, this is obviously ridiculous, but at least it's ridiculous without a bunch of dialogue, you know? And one part that you glossed over or that you left out of the extraordinarily unnecessarily complicated plot was the whole thing with Devin not poisoning, but like drugging Kenny basically, so that he had to go to bath. Yeah. And then admitting what she'd done. And Kenny was already on the way to come back because Miguel and Johnny were gonna go back because Carmen was maybe dying. And then she was just fine and was like, oh no, go back and do Karate Boys. And actually that maybe had some of my favorite moments, even though the whole thing was ridiculous. Just like
Right.
the Johnny and Miguel dynamic, I do believe is the heart of this show.
100%.
You know, and so it was like we get maybe 5 minutes of what made this show worth watching to me in the first place. But then Devin and Kenny kind of like they're kind of cool with each other, and then they fight together, not against each other, but together as a team against a bunch of people like going up levels in a staircase. I don't even know what was happening, like in terms of like why is who going where or whatever. But like I thought it was cool that at least they gave those two characters a little bit of their due in terms of like, you know, I wasn't crazy about the way they'd handled either of them, and just at least letting them kind of have that fight there, I thought was cool. Not like total redemption or anything for the show or the writers, but like that was nice.
And I did like that. So yeah, as Paul said, we find out that Carmen's been pregnant this whole time. Carmen is Miguel's mother. Also, I think she's now married to Johnny, or at least certainly they're partners.
Either engaged or they have a kid coming in theory.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I mean,
she's pregnant. He's the father clearly, and everyone's happy about that. And she something happens. They get a call from the doctors, and so Miguel and Johnny jump on a plane, and then, as you said, get there and then go right back.
Yeah.
Which is, by the way, I looked it up. Barcelona to LA is a 14-hour flight.
That's long.
So I mean, maybe 2 14-hour flights in like 3 days, and that is in great condition to keep fighting. Question mark.
Yeah, I can say I've flown from New York to LA and from New York to Norway, and it takes a day, you know, to like and I mean I've flown to Korea, and then usually we have a day before we do training, because if you try and train the day after a 13-hour flight, you're not going to feel good.
No.
You're just not going to feel good. It's probably easier when you're 18, but I mean I was like early to mid 20s when I did that, and it was your muscles get tight when you sit still.
Airline seats have gotten a lot worse. Granted, he does get to fly first class one way.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny the way that's all done. But so the point is, when Miguel, we think, is going to be taken off the board, there's a question of who's going to fight next.
Right.
And I was really worried they were going to give it to Anthony.
Oh.
Anthony is the little brother of Samantha, another LaRusso, and he's learned to be okay at fighting. And in this world, it seems that makes you world class.
Right. Yeah. 6 months of training, you're good. Go fight the world champion.
It doesn't though, and I did really like even before we got that scene with Kenny and Devin, just the fact that Kenny was the one who was chosen.
Yeah, and it wasn't even a question. It was just like, oh yeah, well, Kenny, of course, Kenny, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they do also. He gets some kind of a nice moment with Anthony, although once again, Mrs. LaRusso proving herself not to be Mother of the Year in my mind.
It was pretty weird, but
she basically makes Anthony apologize for something he very clearly didn't do. And then his response is that he's gonna poison himself with laxatives as well, in solidarity, which I don't really get.
I mean, I think he's taking responsibility for having bullied Kenny, because he did. That was real. He bullied Kenny. He didn't do this one last thing, but it's like, not that he should apologize for doing that thing, but that thing did lead to Kenny getting bullied more. And so taking responsibility for the bullying he did and saying, hey, I understand that what I did wasn't right, and I can't undo it, but I'm going to do something horrible to myself that you can then make fun of me for. I'm going to embarrass myself in a way that, you know, is basically trying to kind of, you know, I'm not going to maybe take a video of it and post it on social media, but like, I kind of appreciated that. Like, I actually sort of thought that I feel like maybe Kenny could have been like, all right, we're good. You don't have to actually drink the whole thing. But like, I mean, I guess he was pretty mad still. So
I actually thought he kind of did. What I thought was funny is that Kenny while Anthony is saying this, Kenny takes the phone call from Devin and finds out that it was her.
Right.
And so Kenny's like, what are you doing?
You're
Anthony?
right.
Yeah. He's like, whatever, dude.
Yeah.
And I was worried we're gonna get a lot more about Anthony doing that. Yeah. We'd already had a couple other similar plot lines of middle school, not high school humor, but fair enough. We moved on. But yeah, that was a nice moment. And there is a nice Dimitri is a kind of a schmuck through a lot of this season. Of the season.
Yeah.
He dances with a pretty girl, which is not like is taking his cheating in a way that kind of made me raise my eyebrows and roll my eyes, but whatever. But he's also being a dick about having gotten into MIT. And then when Kenny comes back, he's immediately like, oh, Kenny's going to be a traitor. Kenny's going to be a traitor. And kind of because of that, Kenny's like, well, maybe I should be a traitor.
Right.
And Silver's like, maybe you should be a traitor. And they do a nice thing of Kenny like jumping into one of those fights and like taking out two guys pretty quickly. And I was just like, okay, good. Justice for Kenny, because I liked him a lot.
And I felt like there was, with all of the stuff going on, I was like, you can't have like 30 seconds for like Dimitri and Hawk to acknowledge that like they were wrong, you know, because Hawk kind of bought into what Dimitri was selling, Eli, you know, and so it was just kind of like, I felt like that was a story beat that was missing, you know.
They acknowledge it to each other.
Right.
But it would be nice for them to be like,
exactly.
Hey, Kenny, well done.
Exactly. You know, like, sorry, like an apology, you know? 10 seconds even. Jeez.
Tori is once again shit on by the whole show.
I don't know. I'm not as sold on that.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't think she's necessarily, I think that might be your interpretation of what they're trying to put out there. I feel like I thought she came off as reasonable, and I felt like the show understood that to an extent, and that that part of it was the Miyagi-Do people kind of accepting her choice to some, like that it was them dealing with their reaction as opposed to you know, and I mean, like, I think the way she went about it wasn't great, but the way they went about it wasn't great either. And I do think, I mean, at the end, she just kind of turned back to like teaming up with them, you know, when it like, you know, when it was going down, when it was like no longer a tournament, when it's like, okay, we're fighting for real now. Okay, I'm on your side, you know.
I should have been clear. When I say shat on, I don't mean that I think they make her make bad decisions. They make her the bad guy. I mean that, like, continuing the trend of the last 4 seasons, bad things happen to her and she can't win.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's what I meant, because, and like in terms of her kind of like getting that redemption, like, I agree with you that it seems that they kind of forgive her and they kind of understand her. And you're right. I don't think the show thinks that she was like horrible, but it does seem like it's like, oh, you were in your grief and you made a dumb decision and we're okay with that, instead of like the LaRussos were really horrible to you and should have let you fight when you like. There's just never been that acknowledgement.
But
no,
that's
also
true. That's
like
true.
her. Go on.
Oh, I guess I kind of disagree on maybe how they mean it, or like I don't think they are showing it to be like that she did make a bad decision, but like
that's fair.
But definitely she doesn't get the kind of acknowledgement from everyone else that like, you know, she made her choice and like that's her choice to make, and you know.
No, I think it's clearly true. And the Cobra Kai team is portrayed like Quan. Quan is definitely, just like I said, just kind of like a dick, and he's hitting on her, and she's annoyed by that. But we do get a nice kind of some development from Kim, including her having this kind of hilarious episode where her and Chosen are both looking for their kids and keep running into each other, and then get into the and there's just a kind of like building tension, and then they like fight and kiss, and it was really kind of nice. And like and she gets to have a couple nice moments with Tori where it's still like, okay, you're not Miyagi-Do by any means, but like before she'd been like, Tori, I don't care what's happening to you. But then she kind of gets hurt by Chosen a little bit as well. And she kind of looks at Tori and be like, yes, they will break our hearts. They will betray us. Take that anger and fight. Which was a interesting moment for sure. But
and
like,
I feel like she was the leader of Cobra Kai, right? And then Kreese comes in and he's like, no, I'm gonna be the leader of Cobra Kai. But like, I feel like the arc that I mean we'll get to, like, I don't even know if I want to contemplate the third part, but I feel like a good ending to the series would be like her and Chosen running Cobra Kai or something.
Yeah, I can see
You
that.
know, or
See that.
even Johnny, you know, like, I mean, because I feel like the show is called Cobra Kai
Yeah.
and their tagline is Cobra Kai never dies, right?
A- And I will say that I was worried early in the season because when this part of the season starts, we're pretty solidly in the world of Miyagi-Do good, Cobra Kai bad.
Yeah,
And that has been very tied up with a lot of Danny good, Johnny bad.
right.
And I kind of didn't want to see that anymore because I was like, that felt like the whole point of your original seasons was like, maybe that's not always true. And maybe like Danny grows up to be the bully and Johnny grows up to be a decent guy.
Yeah.
With some flaws to be sure.
Sure. Yeah, of
Um,
course.
um, and towards the end, in this part at least, while they're still very like Miyagi-Do, it felt like there was a little more recognition of like, yeah, like Johnny's style and Danny's style both have some real merits to them, and that it's not just like the Miyagi is the perfect way, and that both Johnny as a teacher, but also the style that he's dedicated to, which is much more Cobra Kai, has some real value and merit beyond it being sweep the leg and bribe the judge
Right.
and all this
Yeah,
nonsense.
it's a martial art, you know,
Yeah.
and like martial arts are their own things. It's like a mini culture, and each art is its own art, and each teacher's their own teacher. And so, you know, you can have an art and then you have a new teacher and it's a different thing. You know, it's the same thing
Yeah.
coming through a different person, but it ends up different. And so, you know, and I mean, this is how martial arts evolve as well, where you don't have,
Mhm.
you know, one, it's like most martial arts come from other martial arts, you know, like
Right.
these are different branches of the same tree, basically. And
Mhm.
so I think there's often basically being like, oh, this is the good one and this is the bad one, is like,
Right.
it's like looking at cultures and being like, oh, this is a good culture, this is a bad culture. It's like, that's not really good, you know, a
Yeah.
good way of looking at things. And I think a lot of times that doesn't mean you can't look at a culture and say, well, I think this aspect of this culture is very problematic. I think it's very harmful to people within the culture or without it, right?
Right.
But that doesn't mean like that, like one is good and another's bad. And
Yeah.
you know, I think Miyagi-Do is like, I think it's mostly a good martial art, and it seems like it has
Mhm.
very positive um outlook, you know, but
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that there's not room for something else to have value. And so I do think having Cobra Kai, like basically being able to see the value in it and having the show
Yeah.
come back around to being able to um sort of display that value, as opposed to, I feel like that's kind of, I feel like maybe there's a redemption arc for Cobra Kai,
Yes.
the
I very much hope so.
the school, you know.
Right. Because and again, I do think kind of like you said, like any culture isn't monotheistic. Any culture isn't monolithic.
Right.
Many cultures are monotheistic. That's the whole
Yes,
of the story.
sure.
But like can have trends. And I think the idea of Cobra Kai is definitely much more a like do anything you can to win,
Right.
which there is an interpretation of that, which I think is generally the one, and very much the one that Johnny does says, which is what he means is like never quit, never give up on yourself, don't accept defeat as a possibility,
Yeah.
and do everything you can within the rules to win.
Right.
I think it's understandable that some people would take like that the Cobra Kai philosophy would lead a person towards do anything you can to win means going outside the lines of the rules more than something like Miyagi-Do would. So like I'm not bothered by the fact that there are the Silvers and the Creases who are involved in that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I would like it if there was some level of like that doesn't mean that Miyagi-Do fully defends. I mean, it's kind of like the Jedi and the Sith,
Right.
like or I mean the Sith are
Sure.
clearly all bad, 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 bad,
Right.
bad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But the Jedi are not all good, 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 and like the dark side can have some possibilities,
Yeah. Exactly. And when you're specifically talking about learning self-defense, or, you know, and the ability to defend yourself can also extend to the ability to defend others.
Right,
Like once something comes to violence, it comes to violence, you know.
right,
And so you can temper that by saying, okay, well, don't be the one who brings it to violence.
right.
But if somebody else does, like, you know, win, like, you know,
Yeah,
um, let them succeed in leveraging their willingness to commit violence. Don't let that become a way that they can oppress, basically.
I think it's Captain America who says that his father taught him, don't start the fight, but end it.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, but it seems like that's kind of similar idea.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Miyagi of it all.
Oh, Miyagi. Okay, yeah, sure. That's not even the worst part for me, but
no, it's not the worst part by any means.
Okay, yeah.
So we get we get a dream. So we find out that like Miyagi fought in the Taikai a long time ago. He wears this captain's thing that is covered in blood, and we learn that he had killed someone in a fight.
Yeah,
and
that somebody died in a fight.
Yes, that someone died.
He fought someone in the competition, and that person died.
Right.
That's all.
And there's no indication given that like he used like a death move that he shouldn't have, or like he didn't stop when like time was called or something.
Yeah.
Like someone died, and the German guy who's running it all says, yeah, that did happen sometimes. Yeah. Like we tried to avoid it, obviously, but in a way that's kind of like it doesn't happen anymore. Until they fell on the knife.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't in the competition. That was in the battle royale.
Although the utter lack of security by the people running this tournament might be mentioned in the numerous lawsuits that are going to happen.
Sure.
But we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, so Danny starts having this and he gets sent off on a wild goose chase to try and find information about Miyagi, which turns out to just be the plot to lock him in a dog cage with people who also just torture dogs for no good reason other than to remind us that they are bad
right
people.
Yeah, it's just to establish their awfulness, I guess.
Right. But the dogs get freed and get to like eat their opponents, their oppressors.
Right.
I guess good for them. Johnny's cold. Like
Danny,
the dogs.
Danny, right?
Danny, thank you. The dogs just like tear into the guy who's been like locking them up, and he's just like, "Guess you should have fed your dogs," and he just walks out. And it was one of those. But yeah. So anyway, and then Danny has a dream in which he kind of like sees himself fighting a younger version of Miyagi, and then like a cut to what I guess is an AI generated older version of Miyagi. Do you care about that storyline in the slightest?
What storyline? I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, that's fair.
Pretty sure that didn't happen. Yes,
there is no Miyagi in Cobra Kai. I'm okay with that.
Yes, no. So I don't care about that storyline in terms of like, oh, I need to know what happened. That whole time I was like, what are we doing? Like, can we just go and see a tournament where kids fight each other? Like, isn't that what we're here for? Aren't they just supposed to be fighting? Isn't there like a tournament? Like, give me the pod racing, But like, they're like, no, we're going to give you everything except for anything resembling a martial arts tournament, including what was supposedly the martial arts tournament, which, by the way, if you're fighting with no gear up on platforms that you could fall off of, and I know there was padding after the like super high one, but the earlier one I didn't really see padding. But like they're fighting with no gear, full contact.
Yeah.
No one does that. Like if you do that, there may be deaths. There will be severe injuries, like all the time. All the time. Like
you think concussions have a bad rate in football? You have people kicking each other in the head without protection on a regular basis. Like that is a one-way ticket to concussion land.
Yeah, people are going to punch each other in the mouth and break their hands, by the way. If you knock someone's tooth out of their mouth, you're probably going to hurt yourself. You don't punch someone in the jaw. That's why you punch them in the throat. You hit them in the eyes. You hit them in the temples. The mouth is a very bad place to locate your knuckles. Like you will probably injure yourself. And so the idea that like, ooh, there was a fatality like 50 years ago or something is like, yeah, of course there was. Like, look at what you're doing. Oh, that doesn't happen anymore. It would probably. I mean, there is fighting with punching to the head in various sports, right? But it's like bare knuckle boxing is something very different from boxing with gloves, right?
Right.
My understanding is it doesn't happen quite so much anymore.
No.
Right?
It was not good for people.
It was
People
not
died.
good. Like,
People got concussions. People got brain damage.
Boxing with gloves and headgear isn't good for people, but people
Yeah.
do it. But it's much less bad. And so martial arts competitions, if you're wearing no gear, it's going to be a stop match, which is how most karate is. And I'm not saying that none of this happens anywhere in the world, you know, and I'm not quite sure what you wear in Muay Thai, but like, my point is, if these kids were going at it with each other with no gear, like, a fatality should not be a shocking result. It would be a terrible result. But like, when you hit someone hard and there's no protective equipment involved, someone might die. Like, that's just how it works. And somebody is very likely to get seriously injured in something like this. Like, every tournament, there would be a serious injury. And
yeah, especially those platforms. Like, you're falling onto padding, but you're often falling head first.
Yes, you can fall on your head.
You can fall on your head. You could break your neck. You
Yeah.
could break your back. Like, you could just, even just like getting a dislocated shoulder, like not life threatening, but like bad.
Yeah.
Like, would be happening. Half the team
Constantly.
would be like unable to fight anymore.
Yeah. And now the show has had a general conceit that no serious injuries are going to occur by accident during martial arts fighting.
Right.
That's basically been kind of it's like a version of comic book violence, right? It's martial arts.
You won't kill unless you intentionally fire a death blow.
Exactly. And like, there's an extent to which I'm okay with that. Like, that's fine if that's your paradigm. But then what you don't do is go and try and like raise the stakes by like having someone fall on a knife. Because like, to me, the message is like, oh, well, once knives are involved, someone's probably going to die. Like, there was one fight where somebody had a knife and they died. And there were a bunch of fights that people were not at all exercising any caution. And apparently no one died.
Well, and let's tell the whole story of what happens with a knife. It'll be brief, but it's worth going into. So Kreese has had this knife. It's a knife that he got from the grandfather of Kim, who's kind of like the grandmaster of this form of karate. It goes all the way back to his time in Vietnam. And the knife gets stolen, he gets back, and he is just going to kill Silver after Cobra Kai gets knocked out of the tournament. And he's still planning to, but then he finds out his team is back in it. But then all this fighting breaks out, and he's like, screw it, I'm going to go kill Silver. And originally, at least, they sort of set it up as the kids are going to have this kid fight. I mean, they're high schoolers, but still, like, the kids are going to have this martial arts fight. And then off in like a back room, in a locker room somewhere, Kreese and Silver are possibly going to have a fight to the death.
Yeah.
But then, like, he does walk through a room of a whole bunch of kids jumping at each other and fighting each other. He's not holding a knife. He just tucks it into the back of his pants. It gets knocked out somehow. And then in the part that I find the hardest to believe, again, because we have no characterization for him, like, we've seen in the show other people who are raised in, borderline abusive, if not abusive situations where they're told like their only value is that they're good at fighting. Like Axel, who's the person on Iron Dragon, is kind of in that situation. Johnny was definitely in that situation. Silver was in that situation. Kreese was in that situation at one point. Like, it fucks with you and it makes you do stupid shit when you lose. But the idea that he would just see a knife there and grab it and decide, I'm going to go kill someone on international television.
Yeah.
Which, because for some reason, they didn't cut the TV when the whole thing turned into a mass battle royale. And again, there's no security, just to make that clear. Did that seem in any way believable to you?
I mean, I don't believe a fight like this would ever break out at a martial arts tournament like this. Yes. I mean, the only ones where I could see something like that happen would be where there was some kind of external political turmoil that like there were tensions that were like transcended martial arts. But like,
if there's a Russian team and a Ukrainian team and an Israeli team and an Iranian team,
right?
Like,
sure,
yeah, like
sure. Like, I could see
an American team and anyone else who has legitimate reason to hate us, like whatever it is.
But like, it's like the whole animosity between all of the competitors is so anathema to the way big international martial arts tournaments actually function, as far as my understanding. And certainly in terms of my experience in a smaller pool fighting with people, like there's a real experience of like just beating the crap out of each other and then like shaking hands, kind of half hugging each other, and like, maybe some people grab a beer afterwards, maybe some people just sit around and eat pizza and chat about whatever. But it's like there is this real like, we fought hard and like we're good. And I'm sure that's not always everybody's experience, but like the idea that this tournament is this like there's this much animosity between all the teams just doesn't ring true to me. I'm sure there are times when it's true, and I don't know. No, the short answer is no. It doesn't feel at all realistic. I do think keeping the feed live is semi-realistic because it's like, oh, this is good television. Everything will be fine. No one ever gets injured unless somebody's deliberately trying to kill them. And there's a whole history of that knife of the Njongdo, which is like, I won't even get into it, but they were often used for suicide, actually.
Okay.
And there's a whole thing, but
he starts out by pointing the knife at himself, and I had a moment where I was like, you realize seppuku is not Korean, it's Japanese, right?
No, sadly Korea also has a history of, although it's mostly women who were widows, and then if you kill yourself, then you can never be accused of infidelity, and then like your family gets money or something. I don't know. This is not a current day practice. This is from
like when he pointed that knife at himself. Did you have that a moment? Did you have that same thought for a second?
Not really. I was just like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
I was like, what is going on? I mean, I was like, well, one of these people is probably now somebody's gonna die because there's a knife. Chekhov's Njongdo, like great. And like, to me, there's two things that I absolutely detested about three, maybe, right? So one, the fact that we have we're going to raise the stakes by killing off a character in a show where we've never really killed off a character, except like maybe the head of the Iron Dragons killed someone in a cage match. It looked like probably, but it was a little bit like Jet. And anyway, like now we're going to raise the stakes by killing someone, but it's not going to be with hand-to-hand fighting. It's going to be with a knife, right? Which is like almost like kind of telling a lie to me about like hand-to-hand fight. Like if you're trying to show how deadly the tournament is and how the stakes are high, then why are you introducing this external factor that's not really part of the tournament, So like that felt weird to me in that way. So I felt like they're kind of cheating that. And then the second one was we're going to raise the stakes by killing off a character who we haven't given any real personality besides like one trait. And you haven't had that long to get attached to. This is just the 10th episode he's been in, right? So it's not like one of the characters from, not one of the main characters really, right? It's one of the recurring characters from this season. And then also like when you like, I've given them like a lot of slack, I think, in terms of their both lack of and generally poor Asian representation, because I do feel like there really is a place for martial arts stories that are not primarily about Asian or Asian American people. I think those are stories that deserve to exist. I think that insisting that every martial arts story has to have a bunch of Asian people in it, I think is kind of anti-Asian also. And
I loved that at one point they had an Asian character who wasn't into martial arts.
Yeah, that was great. And then he started martial arts, but like, and they've gotten better in terms of having more Asian characters. But when the show has been so bad in that regard in the first place, and it's kind of like, I feel like I was kind of like giving them a pass, and like certainly not everybody had to, and certainly there were things that were like, that's uncomfortable. And I'm sure some things made some people more uncomfortable than others. but I felt like they were making some progress in that regard. But then if like the only character you kill off after being so bad on that front is like, this, Asian villain really without any personality beyond like, I want to win and like, I'm willing to do anything. It doesn't feel good.
It doesn't. And to give a clear picture to those who didn't watch the show of what we mean by this, like there are teams from all over the world.
Yeah.
And
there's 16 teams.
Right. It's never stated that there can only be one team from any one country.
Right.
But apparently the San Fernando Valley is the only part of the United States that cares about martial arts. But like they mention the other teams that they're fighting, and there's a Spanish team, there's an Irish team, which are played as villains too. For like, if anyone's going to be like, yeah, this is all good fun, let's go have a beer. Like, it's the Irish team.
The Irish in orange, by the way.
Yes. Which I did check.
That is a thing. I mean, I know it's part of the flag. I mean, orange and green. But
quick story.
Yeah.
Orange is the color of the Protestant settlers, William of Orange, and all that. Green has been the color of the Irish. The flag was meant to be a flag of unity, but then kind of obviously it didn't happen because there wasn't unification.
Right.
In 2022, I believe the Irish Olympic team, or some major Irish team, the men's soccer team, I think it was the World Cup in 2022, played in orange. And it was like a really big deal because the first time any Irish team had won orange in 25 years.
Yeah.
So I was like, they're in orange? Really? But okay, if it happened 2 years ago, maybe it's happening again. Who knows? But like, there's a Swedish team, there's an Irish team, there's a Brazilian team, which great. Let's have like Brazil. At least I was happy that we're getting outside of Europe, but like we never mention a Japanese team.
Yeah, which there is a Japanese team.
Right. They just don't play any meaningful role. There's a Russian team, as we mentioned.
Yeah. There's a Kenyan team. Don't remember seeing much about them.
Yep. I didn't see any other team from any other part of Asia.
Yeah, I mean, well, technically Cobra Kai, I guess, is from Korea.
Yeah, I mean, other than, and I guess Iron Dragon is from Hong Kong.
Yes,
but I don't think they ever say that word. And
no, they have a logo. I mean, they have the flag, the red
Hong Kong flag.
Yeah, okay. the white, whatever it is, flower inside the red circle.
The chrysanthemum.
Yeah. So that's on the back of their uniforms, but they never mention it. And just for the record, like the Iron Dragons team, their coach is Asian, right? Mm-hmm. Or Asian English or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And their 4 non-captains are all Asian, but then their 2 like captains are both not Asian, and the 4 non-captains just like take a knee and bow out all the time and just let the captains do everything.
Right.
So it kind of felt like they were like, oh no, look, we have Asian characters. And it's like, but those aren't characters. Those are
those are NPCs.
Like, what are you talking about?
And Zara, well, the actress is Asian, so I think we're supposed to think that she might be Asian, but she's South Asian. She's Indian.
Okay, sure.
And great, like South Asian representation is great, but it's not East Asian.
Yeah. And I mean, I think they're meant to be an international team, and I mean, Hong Kong is an extremely international city.
Yeah, Chinese British person in Hong Kong makes complete sense.
Yeah. And I liked him a lot, actually. Like, a lot of the stuff with his character was kind of like, I don't know. I actually enjoyed Mortal Kombat a surprising amount. And I was like, oh, that's that guy.
Yeah. I think I suggested you watch it because I was like, this is really weird how much I like
maybe
you suggested it to me, one or the other. Yeah, he was also in Shadow and Bone, which I really like.
Oh, right, yeah.
And like, I wanted to like Axel, who's the male of the Iron Dragon team, but other than having a mild crush on Sammy and then getting pissed at Miguel, but then coming to help Sammy in the fight, like, he doesn't really do anything.
Yeah, he kind of started to have a little character development, and then they're like, how about if we just give him one character trait for the moment?
Right. And we do. He has this like Wolf treats him horribly, and he's in that like, you have to do this. You're nothing if you don't do this.
That's the coach, the sensei or the leader of the
right.
Which then again, it's like, okay, you have a team from Hong Kong, but Terry Silver took them over. Just like you have a team from Korea, which was like originally Korean, but then was Kreese. and then was Johnny,
Right.
and then was Korean again. But then Kreese takes them over. You
Yeah.
know, so it's like, so you have like 3 teams kind of or sort of from Asia, and like one of them isn't like taken over by like someone from the
Right.
US, but we never see them. Like I don't even know what the, you know,
Right.
Hirobukan like did. Like I don't know. They just lost.
And the Russian team is
It's
like
so
their
it's
team
not
seems fine,
good.
but their senseis are just like they're basically acting like roided out idiots.
Yes,
Like they're
yes.
just so for some reason they decide in one episode, I think 5 people with 5 different accents call Sammy a bitch.
Right, right.
Which is just
I
like what are we doing here?
Yeah, I'm not sure that was all to her, but I think it
That's
was a lot of,
possible.
I think it was just people were like, you know, welcome to Barcelona, bitch, but in like all these different, I was just like, do we need this many of this? You know,
Yeah, like
it was
I
a lot. It was a lot.
I kind of felt bad. I'm kind of curious the actress who played Zara if she was a little frustrated with that part because it like yeah, like influencers are a thing
Mhm.
and some of them you might have negative issues with. I have, you know, certainly some, but like I don't know these people. I just see what they're presenting and they're in a media economy and environment that's encouraging them to be like these things that don't often come off well. And like clearly the actress is one and like she's using it to be an influencer in martial arts
Yeah.
and she's a model and she
Yeah.
looks really good and like God bless her. What the hell's wrong with that? And the portrayal of her as an influencer is so shitty. And like the only real exposure to what I have is from cosplayers,
Mhm.
who are kind of like big influencer accounts,
Mhm.
but they're so happy to lift each other up
Right,
and
right.
to like help and support each
Yeah.
other. And so she kind of is in an elevator with Sammy and Sammy and Devin at one point, and is just like talking to her fans like while she's live streaming. It's like, yeah, I don't even show the people on my stream who aren't even worth it, you know, like they're not as good fighters as me or something.
No. She said only winners. Like I only tell the
Yeah.
stories of winners, you know. But
And it's just so petty, and,
yeah.
like, the way she goes after Robbie and maybe assaults him while he's drunk, or maybe she was drunk too,
Or
but,
takes
like
advantage, however you want to say it. But it
yeah, whatever it is,
Yeah.
it definitely seems like yeah, it seems like she's basically doing it just to fuck with Tori and
Yeah,
also to
yeah.
have a, like, "Look, this is a toy that I want, so I can." And it just felt really mean to her character in a way that I just didn't think like, the actress was great, the actress was an incredible martial artist.
Yeah.
Probably the best female martial artist we've seen on the show.
Yeah. I'm trying to, I don't want to totally sign off on that without being able to mentally catalog everybody, but like
Yeah.
that is probably accurate. I mean, she's phenomenal at yeah. I mean, she's got like yeah. Yeah, I think her and Brandon H. Lee are the 2 most impressive. I mean, I think
Mhm.
best martial artist is a thing that you don't know if you're watching the
Yeah.
show, but most impressive in terms of on-screen display of
Sure.
athleticism and martial arts, martial arts athleticism. Because like
Yeah.
what it actually means to be a good martial artist is not something you're necessarily going to be able to tell from someone acting and performing
Right.
a choreographed dance, right?
Yeah.
Like somebody might not be able to do 90% of what someone much more athletic and acrobatic can do. By the way, like everybody was doing ridiculous acrobatic stuff. Like they just decided this is how they're doing it now.
Uh-huh.
But like Robbie and whatever, but like if that one person can stand there and time you, and when you come in, they just hit you with a reverse punch. Like that's a better martial artist. And I don't care if you could do a 540 kick, you know,
Right.
like that's a very cool thing. And in terms of like exhibitions and stuff, and in terms of
Yeah.
certain types of competitions, that's awesome and can be great.
But if you leave yourself undefended while you're doing that, then yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, but I mean, not even just that. It's like that's not the thing you train to be a better fighter, right? Like
Right.
that's to show off mostly. There are certain things that do look flashy that can be
Mhm.
useful, but like a lot of the most relevant martial arts skills are like much less impressive, and it's really
Right.
more about timing and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, she's awesome. That's the point, if that's what you're getting at.
Yeah. And just that the character I thought was like,
yeah, I doubt like she's super disappointed with the character because like
mm-hmm,
she's 21, hasn't had any other big acting roles, and she got to be in a series that's quite popular and do tons of awesome martial arts. Like,
yeah, that's true.
you know, it's like this isn't necessarily someone who's been in acting school since she was 2, someone who's been
Yeah,
doing martial arts since she was 2, you know.
right.
And I certainly don't want to speak for her, but my
Yeah,
guess is that the majority of the actors actually probably feel better about their characters than we do.
that's fair.
Like I know from what I've heard anyway of Master Kim, of what she's said about her
Mm-hmm.
character, like really appreciating the opportunity to actually play a female sensei, which they didn't even really have any of up until
Right.
her, you know. And it's like, you know, we can be critical of her character or the lack of depth, or I do think
Mm-hmm.
actually there's room there for that to end up being a satisfying story.
Yeah.
Also, I really feel like she had an Australian accent in the first episodes she showed up in, and now I think
Mm-hmm.
she's doing a Korean accent. Um, and I know
That's
she is
possible.
Australian, but I don't know. Maybe she was always doing a Korean accent, but it came out Australian, and now it
Mm-hmm.
sounds more like a Korean accent. I don't know. But like I do think there's an extent to which like actors sometimes probably try to find the most they can within the character. Not that there's not
Mm-hmm.
going to be disappointment, that there's not or that there's some things that they're like, I don't feel like that. Why would this character do this? Like, you know, we're
Yeah.
doing this thing again, you know, but like,
I, I'll just put it
yeah.
this way: if in 10 years the actor playing Zara gets to have a great career,
Mhm.
and she gets to play some parts where there's also some acting depth, or some more,
Sure.
I could see her saying something like, I'm always grateful to Cobra Kai for getting my start, but this character feels like a more accurate representation of,
Yeah. Sure.
some kind of like thing about like, but yeah, I agree. Like for your start, like, I don't think anyone's complaining,
Sure. 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 Yeah.
So we actually got a question in the chat from Max Kelly that leads into kind of we'll get to the exact question, but I want to start with something a little broader. What will the final fight of the series be? And what I want to start with is I've seen a lot of stuff online talking about, oh my God, I can't wait till like part 3, because what's going to happen when we get back to the,
The Sekai
thing.
Taikai.
So, and like, to me, like, these are kids
Right.
with
Right. Right.
parents watching there or back home. Even before someone gets killed, they have so little control of what's happening. I don't mean to keep harping on the no security thing, but like literally, when the kids start fighting, the adults have no way to stop it. Lots of people are going to get hurt, and then someone actually dies on live international television. I don't think there's any way. Like, everyone's going home, and there's probably a lot of lawsuits being filed. And I don't think there's any way that like everyone's like, oh, that's really sad, let's have a funeral, and then 2 days later we're continuing the tournament, right? Like, this is over.
Eh.
Okay,
Do you mean
let me
in a
ask this way.
logical world that's what would happen, or do you
Yes.
mean okay? Because
Do you think in a
obviously,
logical world there's any way this tournament continues?
um, here's the thing. Judging by the way they've conducted things to this point,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I think these people who decided that this whole thing was a good idea would start the tournament again. I don't think they would start it like the next day. I think
Mm-hmm.
maybe they would say, okay, you know, we're gonna take a week off or something, you know, 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then we have to figure out who's gonna replace the dead guy on Cobra Kai's roster. You know, like I feel like that's like, yeah, I do feel like these people, like, name a good idea they've had, you know. And obviously the writers would likely just be like, oh yeah, we're gonna do that, but maybe not. Maybe that is the end of, but it feels like
Mm-hmm.
there's too much like unresolved, you know. It's like, well, is that going to be the end of that? And then like I originally, what I was thinking is like this, once I discovered that this was actually only the second third and not the last half,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh. But like, I was like, okay, what if for this third, they go big and they do this big tournament. And then at the end of the tournament, the third part is like this like denouement of like,
Yeah.
now we're going to go home. What happens when you go home after something
Right.
like that, right? What if you lose? What if you win? Like,
Yeah.
what if some of you
What
lose and some of you win because you're on different teams or whatever? Like,
what if Miguel wins, but he doesn't get into Stanford? What
sure.
if, like all the stuff that
Yeah,
going back to their lives?
exactly. Because I feel like the show started small, and I think it was good because it was small. Like,
100%.
The Karate Kid is a story of a kid getting bullied, but also kind of being a bully. Like, it was less than like rewatching The Karate Kid. It's less like Johnny's just bullying Danny.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Danny kind of sticks up for himself and like does some
Yeah.
similar kind of prankish type, whatever type stuff back.
He makes Peter Parker look polite.
Right.
Like he trash talks back, he
Yeah.
fights back. Yeah.
Exactly. And then him getting threatened, his safety getting threatened by, a group of kids who know karate. And then one guy teaches one kid karate, and then they go to a tournament and he wins the tournament. And that's
Yeah.
the story. That's the whole thing. Like, the
Yeah.
stakes are like, this kid's worried about getting beat up. He learns karate, he wins a tournament, and now he's not worried about getting beat up. That's, there's a girl, that's the
Yeah.
thing. But like, that's basically the plot. And then the plot of season 1 of Cobra Kai was like similarly small. There's a kid who's getting bullied, and he's, kind of afraid for his safety, but also he's lacking the confidence of just being able to stick up for himself. And then, a guy teaches him karate, and then he goes to a tournament, and like he feels better about himself. And like there's more layers to that. It's a series, it's 10 episodes, right? It's longer than a movie, but it's simple, it's small, and the heart of it is this relationship between these two characters. It's not the relationship between Danny and Johnny. That's not the heart of the show.
Right.
It's not between Robbie and Miguel. It's Miguel and Johnny, I think, are really the core of the show. And I feel like seeing what happens after this big moment, because that's this whole show is what happens after losing that big tournament. Well, what if they lost this tournament and then they came back and he didn't get into, or he got into Stanford and couldn't go, or whatever,
Yeah.
It's like, what happens now? Like, do they run a dojo together? Do they do that as like a business? Like, because like Miguel could teach by this point,
Yeah.
And so I feel like that would be an interesting story that I don't think we're gonna get. And to me, the last fight would be not a fight. It would be like some new kid coming in and like Miguel teaching him,
Yeah.
like, this is how you tie your belt, okay, we bow, we say yes, sensei, like, to me, that would be a great ending to the show. And maybe we will get something like that in a 5-minute scene or something at the end. I don't know. Not to say that Miguel should become a karate teacher,
Yeah.
but he could, and it's like, he doesn't have to go to Stanford, but he can, and we'll see.
Yeah.
But like
I do think by this point it's become more of an ensemble show in a way that I mostly like. I don't like that Danny LaRusso's become such a big part of it, and that we backed away from the original idea of like that LaRusso's kind of gotten a swollen head and becoming kind of an idiot, and Johnny is very much a screwed up guy. Like I think he was just as much of a protagonist as Miguel was in season 1, like you said.
Yes, the dynamic,
But now I think like one of the things I think has been a running theme is Johnny trying to also fix his relationship with his, son, Robbie. And that now like there's always a father-son dynamic between him and Miguel. But then once he becomes partners with Carmen, like he's now kind of a stepfather. And an important moment, like where Miguel feels like he's favoring Robbie, like he says, like, you're my son too.
Yeah.
And so I feel like Robbie and Sammy and Tori have all become part of it. And I care about all of them.
Yeah,
like Sammy and Hawk and Eli and all them are going to be going off to colleges. Robbie's not. Tori's probably not. I care what happens to them. I want to know what's going on with them. yeah, the whole kind of like, hobbits go back to the Shire would have been great for a final 5 episodes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch because as terrible as I thought this was, it was entertaining, and I never wanted to stop. I never was like, oh God, I have to watch one more episode. I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. Give me more popcorn. I gotta keep watching. In part because I was like rehearsed, like
you're like, oh, I'm gonna say this about this thing.
Yep. One thing I'll sometimes do now, especially if Paul has seen something, is I will message Paul as we're going about things I say, about things I think of what we're seeing. And then often, like, I will watch a lot later into the night. Paul's an hour ahead of me. And so sometimes Paul gets to wake up to like 2 pages of Discord messages of me saying things. Like, oh, this is something to say, but a lot of it was very negative. But yeah, I really want to think that there's gonna be some, like, Mrs. LaRusso has always been the one who was like, guys, I feel like she's the only one who's ever had the perspective on this. And I feel like most of these kids have parents
right
back home somewhere, and that most of them would be like, I'm okay with you traveling around the world for high school athletics. This is a big deal. And if someone died in a freak accident, maybe I'm still okay. But a person died, because people had the organizers had no idea what to do when all this fighting broke out. And also because one of the adults who was like officially supposed to be taking care of these kids brought a knife into the fight that then got a kid used to try to kill someone else and kill themselves. So if you told me that, like, because we are technically in the finals, and if you told me therefore that like most of the schools went home, and Cobra Kai was like, no, Cobra Kai never dies. Well, one of us did die, but Cobra Kai itself never dies. And that like maybe even like half of Miyagi-Do goes home, and that's why Tori switches sides or something.
Sure.
Because like Dimitri's parents are not letting him stay. Let's be very clear there. So yeah, but you're probably right. Like we probably do have to finish this damn thing. So if that's the case, who's the final fight between?
Oh, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't like. I seriously, like, in terms of the actual, I mean, I think Tori will probably beat up Zara. I think. I don't even like. Did they start the semifinals? Like,
no, they didn't.
They didn't. So they got to the semifinals. Turned out Cobra Kai was going to be in it, and then while they were setting that up, the head of the Russian team came over and
kicked the head of the federation in the head, and we all got started from there.
Right. Yeah. So like, I mean, the Iron Dragons are obviously the best, and they should win. Like, they're just like, also just like, I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe Quan is just more like impressive and less like I was saying before, like timing and stuff like that is more important than necessarily being able to do something fancy. But like him losing in some of the, it felt like, they're like, they'll nerf and buff characters based on just the outcome completely. They want, and so
Robbie got his heart a little broken and lost all ability to fight whatsoever for the first like 5 episodes.
Right. See, that part doesn't bother me so much because if you lose focus, you really can lose the ability to compete. Like, that's real.
Yeah.
But what can't happen is you get motivation and suddenly like you get superpowers. Like, that's not how things work, right? Like, you have your ceiling. That's the best you can fight, and you can fight that well when you're really focused. And some kind of extra adrenaline, whatever, can help you do certain things, but actually too much adrenaline can really interfere. But like losing focus, like getting worse, fine, if there's like a real concrete reason. But like just randomly getting worse so that someone else can win because the writers decided, it's like, I don't know. I don't know.
I think with Quan, I a little bit believed it because like what you said about adrenaline, the sense that I got was that he was someone who was the best of the best, but also had to, on some level, never really meet in his match. And that fighting Axel and fighting Miguel, and also like some of his other teammates, like there is a great scene. I think probably my favorite fighting scene is where Eli and Dimitri, Hawk and Dimitri, who've been having fights all this time, wind up like in this kind of the tag in, tag out match.
Yeah.
They're fighting another of the Korean fighters who's not Kwon, and they realize they kind of have him cornered over where Dimitri and Eli can keep tagging each other in, but they can stop him from tagging out, and he gets exhausted.
Yeah.
And I thought that was like brilliantly done, and I loved like him reaching out a hand and then kicking it down.
Yeah.
Really well done. But I guess I got the sense that Kwon was the kind of person who, like, kind of like Johnny in the original movie, as he got more and more frustrated that he wasn't winning, lost focus in that regard. Like, it became more the adrenaline. It became more the like, no, I'm the best. I have to do this.
Right.
Which I kind of have to believe, or else I just don't believe he goes for the knife.
Right.
But,
Yeah, I guess maybe I would have to watch it again to really have an opinion on that, and that's not going to happen. It's just
not going to do that at this juncture.
Wouldn't be prudent.
Nope.
Oh, hello.
Hello. We're wrapping up in a minute.
So yeah. I mean, I like, who's even left? I mean, I do feel like I think Tori should beat Sam.
Yes, 100%.
Like, please. And I forget what the matchups are. Who are the Iron Dragons fighting? Are they fighting Cobra Kai? Or are they fighting?
So it's the idea is at this point that you're representing your team, but everyone's fighting as individuals from here on in.
Right.
And there are 4 teams left. There's Cobra Kai, Miyagi-Do, Iron Dragons, and the Spanish team, whose name I do not remember because we pay almost no attention to it.
Furia de Pantera.
Thank you. So, and in the first match, if I remember, it was going to be Miguel against Axel and Kwon against the Spanish guy, and then it was going to be Sam against Tori.
Wait,
right?
Miguel?
No,
but isn't Robbie?
No, you're Robbie. Yeah,
Robbie against
sorry.
Axel.
Robbie against Axel, fighting for Sam's love, and then
Robbie. It's Robbie, not Miguel. Robbie.
Oh,
against
right.
Axel.
You're right. Oh God, it's also confusing.
And then Sam against Zara.
No, I think Sam against Zara and then Tori against the Spanish girl.
Yeah,
I think.
And then question mark against the Spanish dude, I guess. Yeah. TBD is up for Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
I feel like that should be Miguel.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Kreese should get booted, and then Miguel should be the replacement for, and then obviously all the Cobra Kai and the,
Oh wait,
Miyagi
what if this?
Yeah.
Because Kreese gets, booted, hopefully arrested.
Yeah.
Because again, like.
But he's a veteran with PTSD.
So anything's okay. But so what if Johnny takes over Cobra Kai?
Yeah.
And Miguel goes with him.
Yeah, except
Robbie would hate it.
No, I don't think Johnny would take over. I mean, maybe he will, but I feel like I want, Master Kim to actually have a team. I don't know.
Yeah.
But maybe Johnny goes over there and partners with her,
Or no, probably Chosen would.
Yeah. But I mean, it could be like Johnny goes over there and coaches Miguel and she coaches Tori. And I want Cobra Kai to win in that matchup, know? And I think that's probably that's how I would end it if I were contractually obligated to write the last 5 episodes and have the first 4 be about the Sekai Taikai, or 2 or 3 or something. This whole Miyagi thing, I've said enough.
I'd be done with it.
Yeah.
I would end the Sekai Taikai in the first episode and then just go back and have that, Hobbits in the Shire for the last 4 episodes.
I do think what's his name? Wolf, the Louis Tan character, I feel like something more is gonna happen with him.
I think so, yeah.
Outside of the just being a coach for the tournament, or a sensei.
Yeah.
I think there's something there, probably. I don't know. Unless they just keep focused too much on Kreese and Silver. I feel like can we just be done with that? Can they just kind of,
I really don't care about them anymore.
Yeah. I feel like and that's my overriding criticism of this season, I'm gonna call it, is that I feel like we're just retreading the same ground again. And like, I guess we're getting some cool martial arts that's a little different from what we saw earlier. I think,
Yeah.
and I do think one difficulty of the show is that you're getting exceptional martial artists in terms of at least like physical ability, athleticism, and everything to play these characters. And then your main cast is a bunch of people who have, made a great effort to learn martial arts and look credible as local competitors. Right. But like, the international stage and the regional stage are just so, it's not the same. And so it's just, it definitely feels like there's just this like, it feels like Cobra Kai, not Cobra Kai, but it feels like the Miyagi-Do people and Tori should just be overmatched. Like they've never fought nationally. They haven't gone around, like their training for this was like they saw a bunch of tourist places in Barcelona, like the train, it wasn't, to me, I feel like, to jump to this level of competition, it doesn't really feel credible to me. And
I think that's true. I think it's true.
What are you gonna do?
All right, I think we're about time to wrap up. Any of the last quick things you want to throw out there? I'm sure you want to give a whole rant about martial arts, which I want to hold maybe for another thing.
Yeah.
Unless you want to say something about it quickly.
No, the only thing I want to say is how it has the Stranger Things problem, where they paused between, I don't know how long there was in production time between this set of episodes and the previous one, or that one and the one before, but Una O'Brien, who plays Devin Lee, shot up like a foot or something and just towers over Samantha Rulos. Like, she's like a foot taller. I'm like, oh man, I feel like I'm watching Stranger Things here.
Yeah.
Because like they hired, for the main characters who were the older characters, they hired young looking adults.
Yeah.
And then the thing about hiring young looking adults to play teenagers is as they get older, they still
stop being young looking adults.
No, for a while they're still young looking adults, so the characters don't look like they've aged. But then when you hire children or like young teenagers to play younger characters, time passes and those people become adults. They don't necessarily become young looking adults.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so like Devin's actress was younger than Sammy's actress.
Yeah.
But Sam's actress had been done growing and Devin's actress was.
Exactly. Yeah, she was a young woman who had that kind of like young looking face. Right. Yeah. And she's still a young woman with a kind of young looking face. Whereas Devin was like I don't know how old she was, but I think she was like pretty young when she was first cast, and she looks pretty young. And then now time has passed, years in the making of the series, and she just grew. She grew, and like, I don't know if she's an adult yet or whatever, but like, she's definitely like, the change in age makes a bigger difference the younger you are, right?
Yeah.
And you can't choose someone for being a young looking adult when they're still a kid, because you don't know how they're going to look when they're an adult. You might have an idea, but it's like in Stranger Things, you're just looking at them like, what's going on here? And like, whatever. It's not, I don't really care. I just think it's kind of funny.
It is definitely funny.
Particularly because they just put them right next to each other. They just straight up put them right next to each other, just like a foot taller. It was like, wow.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. There's one last thing I was going to say that's related to that. Nope, totally gone from my head. Any last things?
That was my last thing. The Stranger Things of it all.
To our audience, thank you all so much. Members, we're not going to do an episode this week. It's been a really rough week for me. The city of Columbus stole my car. Listen to the Star Wars episode, and I'll give you a full explanation of what happened. But Paul, thank you so much for doing this. To all of our listeners, thank you so much. Please think about becoming a member. $5 a month, $55 a year. To everybody, we have spoken.
Strike first, but not yourself.
Strike yourself with mercy. Wait, that sounded
what?
bad.